Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a pair of well-worn Roman sandals and time traveling into a world full of surprises our own. Picture this. You're a seasoned Roman citizen, toga draped just right, and the air outside smells faintly of olive oil and old marble. Life is as it should be, but something feels off. You've just woken up, and there's no rooster crowing. The sky is dim, but you're already running late, and it's all because the universe forgot to include your usual feathery alarm. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're up for it, post your location and local time in the comments. It's always fun to see where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stir awake on a soft mattress, plush and elevated off the ground. Already, something is deeply wrong. Romans sleep on low, firm beds with straw or wool-stuffed mattresses, and yours is suspiciously cloud-like. You reach for the oil lamp, but instead, you're greeted by a curious black rectangle that glows to life with a touch. Historians still argue whether Romans would be terrified or awed by smartphones, but one thing is certain: it's not an object they would trust near their sleeping quarters. There's no rooster, no bustling street vendors hollering for early buyers. Instead, the air is eerily still, too still. A strange hum comes from a box on the wall. What Romans would surely consider a tame fire spirit. It's just your air conditioner. The idea of controlling the indoor climate would have been divine-level sorcery to a Roman accustomed to sweating through sweltering summers and wrapping in thick tunics for cold winter mornings. You pad over to a gleaming flat surface mirror-like and cold to the touch. It's a glass window, not the drafty wooden shutters or cloth-covered openings of Roman homes. The view outside is quiet, orderly, and somehow sterile. Not a mule cart in sight, not a single shouting fishmonger. The silence is unholy. And the time. You squint at the glowing box again. It's 6:30. Not the Roman sixth hour. Not the sun's angle on the horizon, but a precise artificial construct. Romans judged time with sundials, water clocks, and educated guesses. The idea of a society where every soul wakes and moves in rhythm with a machine's numbers might feel tyrannical, or like the ultimate convenience. Your breakfast, too, is utterly baffling. No honey cakes, or olives, or chunks of hard cheese today. You're nibbling something called toast that emerged from a box with a spring-loaded click. The Romans had bread, sure, but this crisp rectangle strange, delicious, suspicious, and coffee. The gods must have sent this bitter, invigorating brew from Olympus themselves. One sip, and your entire being feels rewired. Romans relied on watered-down wine or mulsum, a honeyed mix for their morning sips. The jolt of caffeine might have been welcome in a world where days began with physical labor and political posturing, but they definitely question how it was harvested, shipped, and brewed by pushing buttons. You catch your reflection. Your tunic has morphed into soft, stretchy trousers and a cotton shirt stitched by unseen hands. No pins, no folds, no woolen scratch, just comfort. Romans were meticulous about dressing rituals and public appearance. The notion of slouching around in loungewear would likely offend both their fashion sense and social dignity. Even your footsteps betray you. The floor beneath your feet is smooth and level, not packed earth or uneven mosaic tiles. Your steps make no sound, and yet everything feels unnaturally still. Back in Rome, the clatter of sandals, the bray of donkeys, and the hiss of kitchen fires form the lullaby of the waking city. There's no bustling household of slaves preparing your day, no bustling atrium filling with clients awaiting morning salutatio. Instead, it's just you and the cat, who seems entirely unimpressed by your cultural displacement. If you were a Roman, you'd be flabbergasted. Where is the structure, the ritual, the scent of oil burning? This future seems sterile and personal, yet also oddly luxurious. The comforts are endless, but the human chaos, the noise, the bustling networks of bodies and voices feels muted. You wonder what gods rule here. Who grants the glowing boxes their fire? Who fetches water without buckets? Who heats the walls without wood? Romans were nothing if not religious. Every act had its deity. A society powered by invisible forces might seem either divinely blessed or irreparably cursed. And as you sip your coffee, a rooster crows, but it's from a video on your phone. Now that you're awake, alert, and still slightly rattled by the lack of a morning procession and the presence of caffeinated sorcery. Let's talk about bathing, because oh, the scandal that awaits. As a Roman, you'd expect to be heading toward your local thermi towel slung over your shoulder, maybe stopping for a mulled wine on the way. The public bathhouse is your sanctuary, a place to bathe, gossip, conduct business, and admire marble statues you pretend not to envy. Bathing is communal, elaborate, and social. You undress in a tepidarium, sweat it out in a caldarium, plunge into a frigidarium, and chat the entire time. It's noisy, steamy, and glorious. So what is this modest tiled cell you now step into? A bathroom, someone says. But it's too small to host a philosophical debate, let alone a back massage. And there's no furnace below heating the water. No slaves tending the hypocaust system. No one offering oil to scrape your back. Instead, there's a clear vertical tube with a spout at the top. You pull a lever, and by all the gods, water gushes from above. Warm water. On demand. It feels like divine intervention or trickery. Historians still argue whether such conveniences would have elevated Roman society or made it too soft to conquer Gaul. You stand beneath this modern miracle water, cascading over you like a personal aqueduct from the heavens. There's soap too, some sort of flower-scented slime in a bottle, not a pumice stone or jar of olive oil, and shampoo. What a slippery marvel. Romans would rub in oils and scrape them off with strigils. This is both alien and delightful. And privacy. That's another shock. No laughing teenagers, no chatty senators, no awkward eye contact, just you, the steam and the sound of water bouncing off ceramic. Bathing alone in silence. That would have seemed lonely, or perhaps aristocratically indulgent. The thermae were where alliances were formed and rivals politely insulted. What kind of person chooses solitude for something so fundamentally communal? As you dry off with a soft, fluffy towel, no coarse wool or linen here, you notice the bathroom itself is always warm, always. Romans had to strategically time their visits to the baths for optimal furnace heat. Here, invisible heat radiates from vents and it never runs out. You'd be tempted to pray to the household Larrys for this blessing, though you'd wonder where their shrines have gone. You step onto a heated floor and almost gasp. Heated floor. Romans invented floor heating, yes, but it required smoke-belching fires, vaulted chambers, and the labor of slaves constantly stoking flames. This system is quiet, consistent, and invisible. It works even when you're not watching. Suspicious. And the toilet. Oh, dear listener, the toilet. Romans had latrines, sure rows of stone seats with open gutters beneath, often shared by dozens at a time, side by side with gossip and shared sponges on sticks. Hygienic questionable. Social, absolutely. But here, in this pristine chamber, you find a solitary porcelain throne with a padded seat and a mystical flushing device. With a wave or a push, water vanishes your waist into oblivion. You're stunned. No running to the Tiber with a chamber pot, no rats, no smells, no need for a vinegar-soaked sponge. And next to it, tiny folded sheets of paper. Soft, clean, dry. This alone might reduce you to weeping gratitude or panicked confusion. The entire process from washing to relieving yourself takes place with silence, privacy, and ease. You don't need attendance. You don't need public infrastructure. You don't even need to light a fire. You begin to wonder if you've somehow been adopted by a minor god, perhaps Domitilla, the moist patroness of self-washing sanctuaries. But you'd also miss the chatter, the heated benches, the fragrance of mixed oils, and the quiet hierarchies expressed through who sat nearest the furnace. Bathing wasn't just cleaning, it was life. And here you are, clean in 5 minutes, spiritually unbothered and slightly homesick. Dry and bewildered, you wander into a room dominated by another glowing rectangle. It's mounted on the wall like a sacred tablet. Perhaps the household shrine, but no incense burns, no tiny gods reside there. Instead, with the click of a small wand, moving images appear, tiny, flickering shadows. For a Roman, this is more unsettling than any Haruspex's prophecy. You're watching the news. A parade of voices, pictures, and fast-changing scenes rushes past. And you realize the Roman daily acta, carefully inscribed on stone or metal and displayed in public forums, is now shrunk into this box. No trip to the forum required. No literate slave to read it out loud. The world now speaks to you directly with dramatic music and blinking text. Historians still argue whether this would feel like an apotheosis of civic engagement or the decline of public discourse. Romans valued oration, the weight of rhetoric in a speaker's voice. This hyperactive montage, it feels more like a chariot crash in verbal form. And then there's the scroll. Wait, no. It's a flat, glowing rectangle again. A tablet, they call it, but it's no clay slab. You tap and prod it, and messages, stories, and even lewd graffiti flow across its surface, endless, infinite. There's no end to the scroll. Pliny the Elder would have fainted with delight or suspicion. Information is everywhere and nowhere untethered from place or form. You try to speak, and it hears you. A female voice answers, calm and clipped. "How can I help?" she asks. You nearly drop it. Is this the domina of the house? An oracle trapped in a screen. The Romans often consulted sibyls for divine truths, but this one gives weather updates and plays lyre music on demand. Her name is Alexa, or perhaps Siri, and she doesn't require sacrifice, just Wi-Fi. In ancient Rome, spreading information took days. Scribe would copy records, couriers carried messages, and edicts took weeks to circulate. Here, a child can share a philosophical epiphany or a drawing of a chicken instantly with the entire world. You look around. No one's holding scrolls. No one's reciting Virgil in the street. Everyone is glued to their handheld divination rectangles, muttering and tapping. The concept of odium leisure time, filled with study music and conversation, seems replaced by fast swipes and brief grunts. And then, another miracle. The screen lights up with someone's face. A real face, smiling, talking, blinking, and they're hundreds of miles away. You're witnessing a live conversation, and it's not even magic. Romans used messengers and dictated letters for long-distance relationships. To see someone's face from another city, that would have been the realm of dreams or necromancers. But this talking picture asks if you've seen the latest memes. You haven't. You don't even know what a meme is. You're still reeling from the moving portraits. You hear news from Persia, Britain, Germania, and Africa in mere seconds. Imagine Caesar learning battle reports instantly. Would he have risen faster or simply succumbed to overanalysis? Yet the overwhelming speed, the endless options, the bombardment of noise and light, it's exhausting. A Roman might crave the ordered calm of public reading recitals where a single voice echoed off marble walls, anchoring thoughts in rhythm and space. And still, the most unnerving part remains: no one needs a slave to fetch a scroll or interpret the script. Everyone, even children, have access, literate, informed, and opinionated. The information hierarchy has collapsed. In Rome, knowledge was power hoarded and protected. Here it's everywhere. You try reading a story from this glowing tablet. It adjusts its brightness for your eyes. You scroll with a flick. No ink, no parchment, just light and fingertips, and no need to pause and let your arm rest. Goodbye, scroll thumb. Of course, Romans were adaptable. They might marvel, criticize, and eventually embrace this madness, just as they adopted Greek theater and Egyptian deities. But even the most cosmopolitan patrician would need a long afternoon nap to process the modern world's media buffet. You close the screen. The room dims again. No public criers, no town square debates, just silence, and the soft hum of invisible wires carrying the world into your ears. Still marveling at the voices in the walls and the glowing oracles, your stomach growls. Time to eat, finally something that should feel familiar. You expect to step outside and find a bustling marketplace. Fishmongers yelling prices, bakers sliding flatbread from brick ovens, and a man selling mystery sausages of questionable origin. Instead, you're taken to a place that looks nothing like the Forum. It's a building made entirely for eating. No communal fountain, no temple nearby, no poet reciting satire by the entrance. Just shiny signs, bright lights, and rows of strangers all holding identical waxy boxes. Welcome to fast food. You order from a glowing screen again, with the talking boxes, and moments later, someone hands you a wrapped package that smells aggressively of salt and meat. Romans were no strangers to food stalls papané, served up warm lentils, sausages, and honey cakes, but nothing moved this fast. The idea of pre-made food reheated by flameless magic would have sparked wild philosophical debates at a symposium. You unwrap it to find bread with meat inside. A hamburger, they say. It's strange, but delicious, though the meat is too uniform. In Rome, you'd expect to see the pig it came from, or at least a piece of hoof. This anonymity is unsettling. You chew thoughtfully, wondering what gods bless these fields of uniform cows. There's also a fizzy drink in a transparent cup with a lid. The liquid is dark sweet and bubbling like a Dionysian potion. You take a sip. It burns. It's exhilarating. It's cola. A Roman palate trained on watered wine, fig vinegar, and goat milk might scream in protest. But you're hooked after 3 gulps. Then fries thin, golden rods of hot salted starch. They're addictive, served without sauce or ceremony. Romans loved garum, their fermented fish sauce, and might feel cheated without at least a drizzle of something pungent. Still, these fries have the strange power to silence philosophical discourse. Historians still argue whether fast food would have impressed or horrified Roman elites. On one hand, efficiency, caloric density, and the lack of vermin. On the other, no art, no conversation, no slow preparation to show off one's cultured palate. Where's the roasted dormouse, the stuffed dates, the slow-baked peacock? Even the poor ate more communally than this. Here you sit alone at a plastic table surrounded by quiet chewing strangers and blinking overhead lights. A Roman would expect music banter, maybe a lute. The silence is deafening. You look around and see a sign, drive-through, open 24 hours. You have no chariot, but apparently you can receive food without even leaving your wheeled vehicle. Imagine pulling up in your ox cart and shouting your order to a faceless voice behind a glowing panel. At home, the options multiply. You can have food brought directly to you by strangers called delivery without lifting more than a finger. Romans sent slaves to fetch meals, yes, but this is different. The food arrives in sealed boxes with printed receipts and timestamps. There's no haggling, no gossip with the baker, no risk of being shortchanged. And no kitchen Romans built their domus around the hearth. Cooking was both art and ritual, with bronze tools, family recipes, and the ever-present danger of catching your sleeve on fire. But here, food just appears ready to eat, no charcoal, no labor, no smoke. You open your refrigerator and nearly faint. It's a cold cabinet that hums and glows, filled with fresh fruits, cheeses, milk meats, and something called yogurt. The preservation is magical. Romans dried, salted, smoked, or buried food to keep it from rotting. This thing simply freezes time. And so much choice. Berries in winter, fish without flies, a dozen kinds of bread without a single cracked amphora. You could feed an entire cohort with the contents of one middle-class fridge. But as you chew and sip, you notice what's missing. No one shares your table. There's no lingering, no storytelling, no second helping from a communal bowl. The ritual has shrunk into efficiency. In efficiency, you realize is deeply un-Roman. Still, the flavor, the ease, the luxury of biting into food someone else made just for you, it's tempting, dangerous even. You wonder if it's possible to become too comfortable. Then you finish the last fry, wipe your fingers on a disposable napkin, and answer yourself with a shrug. Probably. You step outside, still licking salt from your fingers, and that's when it hits you, a sea of people wearing trousers. Pants. Tightly stitched, sometimes blue, sometimes black, always unmistakably snug. And none of them are soldiers. If you were a Roman, you'd be scandalized. Pants were for barbarians, Gauls, Germans, horse riders who didn't know better. Real Romans wore tunics or togas draped with dignity and carefully arranged. Trousers were for the muddy, the uncultured, the cold-nosed tribes of the north. They were practical, sure, but also deeply unrefined. To see the entire modern world embracing leg prisons, unthinkable. Historians still argue whether Roman distaste for pants was cultural elitism or clever fashion politics. The toga was impractical, but imposing it signaled status, leisure, and participation in civic life. Pants meant work, war, dirt. And here, everyone looks ready to saddle a horse, even though there are none in sight. You try on a pair. The fabric stretches in ways Roman linen never could. There are zippers' metal teeth that open and close with a hiss, and pockets actual stitched compartments that hold things like coins, phones, and keys. Roman tunics required belts and bags for such tasks. This integration is genius, if unnerving. Then there's the shirt. Not wool, not scratchy, not even layered. Just cotton soft woven, dyed in brilliant colors, and emblazoned with strange phrases. I woke up like this. Death before decaf world's okayest centurion. Romans prized inscriptions, but mostly for tombs and honorific statues, not to broadcast breakfast preferences. You spot a woman jogging in leggings and a tank top. She wears no stola, no palla, no veil, and no one seems shocked. In Rome, respectable women covered their bodies and hair. Even in the heat, modesty was paramount. Here, women wear whatever suits them whenever they please. You watch someone in a crop top enter a temple-like structure. No priests stop her. She buys coffee and leaves. The streets are filled with children in miniature pants, seniors in comfortable shoes, and businessmen in garments that scream ready for battle without showing a single ankle. Fashion once dictated by class and occasion is now flexible. Even sandals have transformed. These aren't your leather-bound caligae. They're made of rubber and foam molded by some industrial Vulcan and branded with symbols that might as well be sigils, swooshes, stripes, check marks. Yet the irony. It all works. People walk fast. They sit cross-legged without ceremony. They dance, run sprawl on grass, all without worrying about tunic drapery or toga logistics. You recall the struggle of arranging a toga 9 yards of fabric, a process so intricate it required assistance. Pants, meanwhile, just zip and button, barbaric but efficient. Still something's lost. There was elegance in Roman clothing rituals, a shared understanding of station, purpose, and occasion. The toga wasn't just cloth, it was a declaration. Here, clothes are silent. They don't announce your father's name or your voting record. You could be a senator or a cobbler, no one would know. And yet people use fashion to express other things: rebellion, identity, humor. A young man walks past in a cape and tunic, an intentional nod to Roman style. Cosplay, they call it. It's not reverence, it's nostalgia and irony. You're unsure whether to be flattered or insulted. You peek inside a department store and nearly collapse. It's a palace of clothing, walls of fabric, endless rows of styles and sizes, no tailor in sight. You pick a shirt, pay a machine, and leave. No bartering, no measuring, no name dropping. Your tailor's grandfather. It's impersonal, but gloriously fast. Still, the lack of ceremony stings. No one marks new garments with offerings. No one praises a well-folded toga. No one even adjusts your hem. They just wear and go changing outfits as easily as sandals. In Rome, clothing was identity. Here it's convenience. You tug at your stretchy waistband and sigh. Maybe pants aren't so bad, especially after a large meal. Just as you're coming to terms with the tyranny of trousers, a strange beast rolls past you fast, shiny and silent. It's not drawn by oxen or horses. It has no reins, no driver perched up high with a whip. Instead, it glides, steered from within, by a woman, alone. Your Roman sensibilities sputter. A woman driving with no chaperone and no road toll collector checking her permissions. If this is the future, it's one where Roman gender roles have not merely softened, they've disintegrated like cheap papyrus in the rain. In Rome, women could own property-run businesses and wield quiet influence, but public visibility, especially in masculine spaces, was fraught with restriction. Riding through the city, alone, unthinkable. Only priestesses, or particularly scandalous aristocrats, dared to appear so independently mobile. Yet here, in the modern world, not only do women drive, they do so while sipping from cups, talking to their glowing rectangles, and wearing outfits that would make a Roman censor keel over. Historians still debate whether Roman society was progressive for its time. After all, Livia wielded enormous clout behind the scenes, but such overt independence would have caused murmurs at the baths. Now, it's unremarkable, commonplace. You watch as another woman, this one elderly silver-haired and wearing sneakers, steps confidently into a building marked bank, alone. No male escort, no slave assistant, no token guardian. In Rome, the paterfamilias oversaw all transactions. Even wealthy women often had to act through a male proxy for legal contracts. Here, the concept of guardianship is absent. Women speak for themselves, vote for themselves, and drive giant metal chariots through the streets without asking anyone's permission. And these chariots, Romans loved speed, horsepower, and spectacle. The Circus Maximus hosted races so thrilling they caused riots. But those chariots needed horses' careful training and nerve. Here, speed is embedded in machines. No reins, just pedals and buttons. And they go faster than any quadriga ever dreamed without manure, without the danger of trampling senators. Inside the vehicles, there are cushioned seats, air that cools or warms at will, and magical boxes that play music on command. You can barely hear the engine. You wonder if Mercury himself blessed this contraption for speed. You try riding in one. The driver, a teenager with bright hair and a face full of metal jewelry, doesn't even seem nervous. She zips down lanes lined with glowing lights that change color to direct the flow of metal beasts. Red means stop. Green means go. Romans used gestures, horns, and muscle. This system, while terrifyingly fast, is orderly, almost too orderly. And then you encounter public transit. Not a litter borne by slaves, but massive metal serpents on rails, buses, trains, subways, all packed with humans. They sit quietly staring into their glowing rectangles, making no eye contact. There's no chatting about grain prices, no debate over poetry, no drama. Just silence, hums, and motion. The idea of women in these spaces, unaccompanied, unafraid, is the true marvel. In Rome, a woman walking alone in public might invite commentary, scandal, or worse. Here, it's unremarkable, expected. Some even jog alone through parks, wear headphones, and dress in brightly colored athletic wear. You'd assume they were priestesses of Minerva, except for the earbuds. Even children ride alone sometimes with bags on wheels. They seem confident, worldly, already half adult. You wonder what Roman parents would say about this, about a world where freedom and mobility begin early and are gender neutral. And yet, not all is perfect. You overhear a mother whispering warnings to her daughter. Don't walk alone after dark. Some fears persist, you realize. Independence is powerful, but not invincible. Still, the mere fact that such independence exists, encoded into laws, infrastructure, and culture, would stun a Roman mind. You think of Cornelia, mother of the Gracchi, forced to wield influence from behind the veil of domesticity. What would she have done with a car, a law degree, a podcast? You watch another woman adjust her keys, open her own home, and slam the door behind her. No paterfamilias needed. No priest to bless the threshold. Just one woman navigating her domain, behind the wheel of her own life. After surviving the culture shock of high-speed freedom and the demise of male guardianship, you stumble into what should be a familiar sight: books. Or at least, you think they're books. They're neatly aligned, on shelves, yes, but there are thousands of them, all uniform in size, all bound in vivid colors, each covered with a printed image and a strange little square filled with black and white patterns. They call it a barcode. For a Roman accustomed to scrolls and codices painstakingly copied by hand, this is mind-bending. Books weren't disposable. They were sacred investments. The idea that anyone at all, can own a library of bound parchment filled with clean lettering printed identically from copy to copy. It would have felt like a library in every home, a miniature Alexandria. And yet no one treats them like treasure. They thumb through them with sticky fingers. They stack them on floors. Some aren't even made of parchment. They're thin, glossy, and full of images, what they call magazines and comic books. The latter depict heroes in armor, yes, but they fly and shoot fire from their hands. You blink. Are these the new gods? You reach for a thick volume printed in dazzling clarity with page numbers and even a table of contents. It's all so orderly. Scrolls required memory, patience, and effort to navigate. Here you flip pages like shuffling papyrus leaves in a hurricane. Want to find the third chapter? Just look at the number. A luxury the ancients couldn't even imagine. Historians still argue when exactly the codex, what we now call the book, overtook the scroll in popularity. But none could have predicted the modern abundance. Here, even the lowest citizen can afford a book. There's no scribe, no ink stains, no dictation. Just press a button and a factory churns out knowledge like amphorae of wine. But there's more. Beyond paper, there are ebooks. Digital volumes stored inside tiny rectangles, those familiar glowing tablets again. You can summon Aristotle with a swipe, Pliny with a tap, and they never fade, never wrinkle, never mold. Romans copied texts to preserve them against the rot of time. Modern readers just back them up to the cloud, which confusingly contains no visible vapor. You try reading one. The screen glows gently, adapting to the light in the room. No oil lamp needed. You can even make the letters bigger or change their style, turning the sacred into something tailor-made. You're half horrified, half elated. What's stranger still? Everyone reads. Children, women, common laborers, all literate. In Rome, reading was for the elite. Public inscriptions, yes, but deep textual analysis, reserved for the senatorial class or educated slaves. Here, entire bookstores cater to casual reading. Fiction fantasy stories, not of conquest or history, but of talking animals and time travel. It's democratized imagination. And speaking of time travel, you spot another Marvel audiobooks. A voice calm clear reads to you from the glowing tablet. No scroll, no breathless slave speaker, no public orator needed. It's like having your own Cicero tucked into your tunic. Perfect diction, no interruptions. Even public spaces reflect this literary revolution. Libraries are open to all, stocked with thousands of titles, organized by logic theme and even mood. You walk into one and see people reading silently without being scolded for their class or dress. Scrolls once marked your status. Books now erase it. You spot school children flipping pages, their fingers following along. They're not memorizing verb conjugations or copying Cicero with cracked quills. They're discussing themes, making jokes about plot holes, and drinking juice boxes. You blink. Juice in a library sacrilege. And yet, charming. You can't help but feel awe. For centuries, your people built roads, aqueducts, and legal codes to preserve order. But here is the true wonder, the conquest of information. You need not fear fire or mold or the disappearance of a great mind. The past, the present, and every imagined future sit neatly on a shelf or in your pocket. You flip a final page and sigh. No need to roll it up. No wax seal. Just a gentle closing sound and a quiet click. Progress, it seems, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it turns softly like a turning page. Feeling emboldened by the discovery of portable libraries and whispering oracles, you decide to seek out one final comfort from home, the bath. Not the strange, solitary ritual from earlier, but a true Roman bathing experience, communal, steamy, and slightly gossipy. Surely the modern world has something similar. You search for a public bathhouse and find a spa, or a gym, or something called a wellness center. The names vary, but the result is the same: private rooms, locked doors, whispered music, and not a single toga in sight. The caldarium has been replaced by a personal shower stall. The frigidarium. Maybe a cold plunge tub if you pay extra. Where are the marble floors? The fountains spouting gods? The mosaic murals of sea monsters and frolicking dolphins? Where most crucially are the people you peek inside a modern sauna and see two individuals sitting silently on opposite ends of a wooden bench. They're not chatting. They're not oiling each other's backs. One of them has earbuds in. The other is meditating. The Roman part of your soul withers slightly. In ancient Rome, the bathhouse was the lifeblood of community. You came not just to wash, but to exist, to be seen to flirt, argue scheme, and occasionally wrestle. It was where poets found patrons, where politicians whispered deals, where lovers passed notes. Here, it's like everyone's pretending they don't see each other. You could swear some even avoid eye contact. Historians still debate the true centrality of the bathhouse in Roman life, but there's little argument that it was where life happened. Privacy wasn't the point. Quite the opposite. Nudity among strangers was normal. In fact, the absence of clothing was part of the democracy of the bath. No robes to mark your rank. You slip into a modern hot tub and sink beneath the churning water. It feels good, soothing, clean, and strangely quiet. But something's missing. The slap of sandals on marble. The aroma of lavender oil. The distant splash of a friend cannonballing into a heated pool while shouting the latest gossip about a senator's scandalous niece. Even the modern materials feel off. No stone, no bronze, no open sky. Just plastic chrome and mood lighting. Romans built their baths as temples to the body-vaulted ceilings, echoing chambers' colonnaded walkways. Here, it's efficient, quiet, beige, and the strigil. Where is your trusted metal scraper? You ask for one, and the attendant hands you something called a loofah. It's fluffy, soft, ridiculous. Romans scraped dirt with all the grace of a battlefield maneuver. Loofahs are suspiciously pleasant. Even the afterbath rituals differ. You'd expect to lather in perfumed oils, maybe get a vigorous massage from a burly man named Gaius. Instead, you're offered a warm towel and cucumber water. It's nice, too nice. You begin to worry you'll forget the smell of boiled olive oil. Then you notice something else. Most people bathe alone, or in pairs quietly. No packs of friends, no boisterous toasts. It's wellness, not community. Relaxation, not raucous engagement. The soul of the thermi has been siphoned into bite-sized spa packages. And yet the hygiene Romans would have killed for this level of cleanliness. No open gutters. No bath attendants with questionable hygiene habits. No floating olive pits. Modern bathing, for all its solitude, is effective, efficient, clean. You towel off and pass a display case. It's filled with jars, lotions, scrubs, toners, things that smell like peaches and eucalyptus. Romans used perfumed oils, yes, but this is an alchemical bounty. Skincare as religion. Still, you can't help but miss the chaos. The laughter, the arguments about epic poetry, while three men wrestled in the shallow end. Here, even the laughter is hushed, and the most scandalous thing that happens is someone forgetting their flip-flops. You return to your room, clean, pampered, but vaguely lonely. No one offered to share their oil. No one asked your opinion on the latest gladiatorial match. Bathing, it seems, has become a private act. And while your skin has never been smoother, your soul yearns for the messy, noisy, gloriously wet heart of Rome. Back on the street, you begin to sniff the air. Not for danger, not for fire, not even for roasting chestnuts, but simply out of habit. As a Roman, your nose was an early warning system. You could smell a tanner's shop from a block away, a fish market from two. But here, the air smells like nothing. Where's the stench? The mingled perfume of humanity, livestock, sewage, and spiced wine. Rome was alive with scent, some of it glorious, some of it ghastly, but all of it undeniably present. Here the streets are, sterile. The smells are mild, the noise controlled, the chaos gone. You walk toward a drain, expecting to see something familiar. A trickle of gray water, the occasional rat, a child poking a stick where it shouldn't. But no, beneath a heavy metal lid, sewage vanishes, carried away silently by pipes that run beneath the city like secret rivers. No fetid gutters, no open channels. The Cloaca Maxima was Rome's engineering marvel, sure, but this is sorcery. You pause at a crosswalk and suddenly the ground makes a gentle humming sound. Lights change from red to green and cars obediently stop. You cross unharassed by speeding chariots or runaway oxen. No one throws chamber pots out the window. No one curses you for stepping on their toga. Historians still debate whether modern urban design represents a utopia or simply a highly sanitized illusion. Romans built straight roads, yes, but they also built them with the understanding that you'd dodge a mule sidestep a procession, or occasionally be flattened by a senator's litter. You glance around, no horses, none, not even in the marketplace. You pass a petting zoo where children squeal over animals behind fences, tiny goats, chickens, even a donkey. The donkey stares at you as if to say, "You used to ride me." Now, I live behind plexiglass and eat organic hay. Transportation in Rome was a mix of muscle and mess. Carts creaked, hooves clattered dung, steamed in the midday sun. Pedestrians weaved through this tangle like dancers at a chaotic festival. It was alive, unpredictable, pungent. But here, everyone stays in their lane. Literally. There are painted lines on the road and people obey them. Drivers stop. Cyclists wear helmets. Pedestrians walk in silent columns. It's eerie. Even the soundscape has changed. Rome was a cacophony. Vendors shouting sandals, slapping dogs, barking someone playing a flute poorly in the distance. Modern streets are quieter. Cars hum instead of roar. Music comes from invisible speakers. Conversations are carried out in whispers. And even public shouting is rare enough to draw stares. You finally find a small canal. Water flows through it clean and clear. A decorative fountain, not a drinking source. You recall the aqueducts, those mighty arches marching across hillsides, delivering water to the people. Modern plumbing hides its triumphs underground. Rome celebrated them in the open, and the smell still nothing. You lean down near a storm drain and inhale. Just clean air, maybe a hint of car exhaust, but nothing that makes you gag or plot a letter to the Senate. You visit a public restroom, half expecting a return to Roman form, shared benches, open gutters, communal sponges. Instead, it's gleaming porcelain flushing water and individual stalls. Privacy, hygiene, and not a whiff of embarrassment. Roman sewage disposal was a marvel for its time, but this system is practically divine. No constant fire to mask odors, no servants sweeping excrement into side channels. no threat of disease lurking around every cobblestone. You recall Pliny's account of Rome's bustling streets, the noise, the filth, the glory. Compared to that modern life, feels like a sanitized scroll, beautiful, legible, but perhaps missing the spicy edge of authenticity. Still, your sandals stay clean, your nostrils don't twitch, and you haven't stepped in horse droppings once all day. Progress possibly, but you whisper a quiet apology to the Cloaca Maxima. Its legacy lives on, just hidden beneath concrete and the faint scent of nothing at all. By now, your Roman instincts are on high alert. You've walked for miles without hearing a whinny dodging a donkey or inhaling the pungent perfume of horse sweat. It's almost as if the beasts of burden, the backbone of ancient transport, have been erased from existence. Rome in your day was a city of hooves. Horses, mules, and oxen hauled carts, wagons, and litters. The streets echoed with their clatter, and their waste was a daily inconvenience. Crossing the Forum without stepping in something unholy was a minor miracle. But here, the only hoof you've seen was painted on a coffee shop sign, Galloping Grounds, drive-through espresso. You pass by rows of vehicles, metallic, humming, some parked so neatly it seems orchestrated by divine hand. They glide instead of gallop. They don't neigh. They don't bite. They don't need feeding, grooming, or resting. They live on something called gasoline, and their exhaust smells sharp but faint. Compared to a Roman street, this is a perfumed garden. Historians still puzzle over the environmental impact of Rome's animals, how much food, water, and manpower went into managing them. But for all their mess, animals gave the city life, rhythm, and yes, character. A cart piled with amphorae creaking under the weight. A horse, decorated for Saturnalia, prancing like a minor god. A donkey with one ear missing, but perfect knowledge of every shortcut through Trastevere. Today's roads are clean, not metaphorically, literally. You could walk barefoot and not need a slave with a water jug to rinse your feet afterward. No dung, no fleas, no risk of being splashed by a poorly aimed chamber pot. You peek into a garage and find what might be the modern stable cars resting quietly, fed not by hay, but by long rubber cords that connect them to the wall. Electric ones, they whisper. You nod solemnly, half expecting to see mercury emerge from one and speed off. And what of deliveries? In Rome, messages and goods moved on foot or hoof. Couriers wore out sandals before sundown. Now, boxes fly through the air in winged metal birds' planes, or arrive at your door carried by smiling strangers in matching uniforms. Not a cartwheel in sight. You spot a young couple exiting a sleek black vehicle. They didn't even touch the wheel. It parked itself. Self-driving, they explain as casually as if discussing the weather. You're struck dumb. No charioteer, no reins, no shouts of Hugh to turn. The vehicle navigates based on stars and roads it can't even see, or more accurately, on invisible beams and digital maps. A kind of mechanical augury. Public transport, too, has abandoned the beasts. Long metal worms trains rush along hidden tracks. Underground. You descend into one such tunnel, expecting echoes and maybe a few sacrificial chickens. Instead, you find clean tiles, bright signs, and a map more complex than any Roman road network. The train arrives not with a snort, but with a whisper. And the streets above, they are suspiciously wide, no wheel ruts, No stone pavers worn into grooves, just flat, black paths marked with white lines and glowing signs. Chariots were loud, unpredictable, always at risk of tipping. These vehicles float like dancers on a polished floor. The contrast is dizzying. You pause at a traffic light. Yes, even crossing the street has been domesticated. The red man forbids. The green man permits. And no centurion is needed to enforce it. You think back to the Via Appia, to muddy detours, to the thrill of watching a galloping team of horses fly past while you shielded your face. You remember the smell of the stables, the sound of iron-shod hooves, the occasional runaway ox barreling into the bakery. Here, there is no panic, no detours, no beasts, only quiet, orderly, horseless progress. And for the first time, you miss the chaos. Just a little. Having survived the highways of silent beasts and the mysteriously odorless streets, you finally return indoors. It's time to rest. You seek out a couch, perhaps a familiar lectus, the kind you reclined on during banquets, while dangling grapes into your mouth. But what you find is something else. A sofa. It's huge, soft, deep enough to swallow a person, covered in fabrics unknown to Roman weavers, smooth plush and strangely inviting. You sit expecting stiffness. Instead, you sink. It's like being absorbed by a cloud. In Rome, furniture was functional symbolic. A lectus served for dining, sleeping, and social ranking. Chairs only for the important. Most people stood leaned or perched on stools. Here, seating is egalitarian. Chairs everywhere, cushioned thrones for all, even in waiting rooms, even in bathrooms. You stretch out and find the sofa has arms. Not the kind that swing swords, but padded extensions to rest your real arms. And it reclines. With a lever, no slave required to adjust your posture, just a pull, and gravity does the rest. Historians still argue whether Roman furniture was truly uncomfortable or simply a reflection of their values. Posture, presence, and formality mattered. You didn't slouch through a symposium. You didn't nap during a poetry reading. The body reflected the mind. Here, though, slouching is a lifestyle. Even beds have changed. Yours is massive, possibly wider than a triclinium. It has a pillow top, 3 layers of sheets, and something called a mattress protector. A Roman bed was a wooden frame, a stuffed sack, and maybe a headrest if you were lucky. Here, your bed could double as a naval vessel. And the chairs? Oh, the chairs. Swiveling, rocking, massaging. Some even have built-in speakers. You sit in one and press a button. It vibrates. Another button heats your lower back. Another unfolds a leg rest. A slave with this level of attentiveness would expect a raise and a day off at the baths. You walk into a modern dining room and find everyone sitting upright in matched chairs. At a rectangular table, no reclining, no spoon-fed morsels, no vomiting couches. Romans dined lying down, leaning left to leave the right hand free for eating and gesturing. Here people sit like soldiers, plates aligned, napkins folded backs straight. You attend a lecture in a theater. Everyone is seated again. Rigid rows, upholstered chairs, quiet attentiveness. You stifle a laugh, remembering Roman lectures Men in tunics fidgeting on benches, some napping, others openly arguing with the speaker. Today's audience merely claps politely. No hecklers, no poets hurling figs. You peek into a school. Rows of desks, one for each child. Personal chairs. In Rome, students shared benches or knelt on floors. Now, every posterior has its own throne. And offices. No standing scribes. No shoulder-to-shoulder copying. Just rows of humans sunk into ergonomic cushions, rolling around on wheels like well-oiled senators. The status chair is no longer marble or carved wood. It's something called lumbar supportive. Even toilets are seated experiences now. Romans might squat over open channels, but today's throne is literal padded seats, heated lids, and sometimes built-in musical functions. You laugh. If the Senate had seats this comfortable, they might have passed fewer wars and more naps. You sit again anywhere. The options are endless. Ottomans, futons, beanbags, bar stools. You wonder how a Roman would choose without a slave to advise. And that's when it strikes you. This world is designed for sitting. Everything from food to entertainment, transport to work revolves around the chair. No togas to wrinkle. No need to appear dignified while half reclining. Just sit. Sit and do everything. Read, work, eat, watch, speak. Even exercise. There are machines that let you cycle while seated. Rome had temples. This world has sofas. You stretch your legs, glance at your now wrinkled trousers, and sigh. Comfort has triumphed over ceremony. Function over form. Your back has never been more grateful. Your pride slightly less so. Still, you have to admit this chair has its charms. With your limbs now fully acquainted with modern comfort, you begin to crave a familiar Roman experience, the feast. Not a snack, not a sandwich grabbed in haste. A full, proper hours-long event filled with conversation flavor and the occasional near death by overindulgence. You arrive at what they call a dinner party and brace yourself. But instead of reclining on couches with 3 friends and a bowl of wine, you're handed a chair again and shown to a table. There's no oil lamp flickering, no incense burning, no slave boy offering to wash your feet or an old cook sharpening knives dramatically near a hearth. Just candles that aren't real and a strange, eerie silence. You sit, upright, like a barbarian, and the food arrives all at once, in tidy, individual plates. No courses, no appetizer of salted fish innards, no garum, no honey-drenched dormice. Just salad, followed quickly by pasta, and then a dessert called cheesecake, which bafflingly contains no actual cheese as you know it. Historians still argue whether the Roman convivium was more about food or theater. One thing's for sure, it was a spectacle. Dishes piled high, spices from the East, exotic birds dyed and stuffed within each other like edible nesting dolls. Here, everything is neat, predictable, and portioned, and no vomiting couch. That's the most shocking part. In Rome, excessive feasting meant periodic purging. The vomitorium was not, as many assume, a dedicated room for expulsion, but the act was real enough. Eat, purge, eat again, all part of the dance. But here, people eat once and stop, like quitters. You take a bite of roast chicken. It's tender, clean, and entirely free of bone shards. There's no need to rip it apart. No juicy splatter on your tunic. You eat it with a fork, a strange three-pronged trident that feels like Poseidon's cutlery. In Rome, spoons were common, fingers more so. This utensil business, intriguing, slightly absurd. Even the wine has rules now. You pour your own. No slave with a silver jug. And it's sipped slowly in small glasses without dilution. You're scandalized. Romans mix their wine with water, fearing the shame of drunkenness. Here, a dinner guest boasts of their fourth glass. You raise an eyebrow, then drink deeply. And the conversation, polite, structured. There's no arguing about Stoicism versus Epicureanism. No shouting match over whether the comet last week means war or marriage. Just small talk, weather, work, and television shows. You try to introduce a heated comparison between Cicero and Cato, but the room nods blankly. Someone changes the subject to their dog's anxiety medication. You excuse yourself. Go to the kitchen, a room dedicated entirely to cooking. No open flame, just smooth surfaces, humming boxes, and machines with blinking lights. There's an oven that heats food evenly and invisibly. A microwave that cooks with beams. Beams, no need for charcoal or soot. No need for a slave to turn the spit. The food spins itself. Even leftovers are stored in plastic sarcophagi and labeled with dates. You recall the joys of waking up to half a goose and some olives under a damp cloth. This cold organization feels efficient, perhaps too efficient. You return to the table. Dessert is served. It's sweet, creamy, and impossibly smooth. Romans loved sweets, candied nuts, honeyed fruits, spiced pastries. But this is alchemy. A whisper of citrus, a texture like silk. You wonder aloud whether they used fermented fish brine. They do not. Apparently, no one here has even heard of garum. You die a little inside. The feast ends quickly. Plates are cleared by hand, not by servant. People thank the sight, then scatter. No music, no poetry recitation, no juggling slave troops. Just quiet exits and a mumbled, "Thanks for dinner." You sit alone, recalling the layered sensory assault of a Roman scene of laughter singing smoke spice heat and scandal. Here you feel full, but curiously unsatisfied. Modern meals feed the body. Roman feasts fed the ego, the drama, and the gods. Still, you pat your belly, now comfortably full, and admit one thing: the cheesecake was divine. After the feast, oddly silent, curiously clean, you find yourself drawn to another Roman pastime, religion. Not because you're seeking favor from Jupiter or worried about omens, but because surely somewhere in this world of glowing rectangles and horseless carts, someone must still be appeasing the gods. You seek a temple. What you find is complicated. There's a structure with spires, stained glass, and solemn music. It resembles a Roman basilica, more than a temple to Mars. Inside, people kneel on padded benches and speak to a god, not of thunder or grain, but of love and salvation. No animal sacrifice, no incense thick enough to drown a cohort, just silence and a sense of personal connection. You wander further. There's a mosque, a synagogue, a Buddhist temple, even a building filled with soft lights and abstract meditative humming where no gods are named at all. The modern world is not defined by a single pantheon. It is pluralistic. Many faiths, many rites, all practiced alongside each other. Historians still debate whether Rome was tolerant or simply pragmatic in its religious approach. Yes, new gods were adopted temples built for imported deities. But ultimately, loyalty to the state's rituals came first. You could worship Isis so long as you sacrificed to the emperor. That was the unifying force. Here, there is no such mandate. Worse to your Roman sensibilities, many believe in no gods at all. Atheism, once punishable by exile or death, is now a respectable dinner table opinion. People derive meaning not from augurs or haruspices, but from philosophy science or therapy. Shrines are now bookshelves or yoga studios. You enter a bookstore and find a section titled Spirituality. It contains crystals, self-help manuals, and books about finding inner peace by rearranging your furniture. You scoff, then flip through one called The Universe Has Your Back. There are no gods, just vibes. You miss the clarity of the Roman pantheon. You knew who handled which domain. Neptune ruled the seas. Vesta watched over the hearth. Here it's vague, murky. Even funerals lack grandeur. You watch one online recorded, edited, streamed to friends unable to attend. No incense, no wailing, no coin placed in the mouth to pay Karen. And then perhaps the strangest shrine of all the shopping mall. Wide halls, marble floors, domes and columns, visually Roman, but dedicated not to Jupiter, but to clothing brands. You walk through past glowing signs and life-sized portraits of models selling sandals and beltsons. The statues are plastic. The priests are cashiers. You wonder whether commerce has replaced worship. Where once you offered coins to the gods for rain or fertility, now people offer coins or credit cards for scented candles and matching luggage. It's devotion, just rebranded. Even celebrations have changed. Saturnalia was a week-long frenzy of reversal and laughter. Here, holidays are brief-themed around gift-giving and constrained by work schedules. There are no toga-clad revelers tossing dice or singing lewd songs, just polite cards and digital music. And yet you see echoes. Christmas trees are evergreen. Easter has eggs. People still light candles for the dead. Some still make offerings, flowers, photos, even food for ancestors. The urge to honor, to seek meaning beyond the mundane, persists. But the state no longer demands sacrifice. There are no official augurs, no religious tests to enter politics. You can rule a nation here and believe in nothing at all. The divide between civic duty and divine favor has been formalized, codified, and mostly severed. You stand at the edge of a fountain, no nymphs, just coins tossed for luck, and reflect. The Roman world ran on appeasement, gods, spirits, emperors, ancestors. This world runs on personal choice. Belief is private. Sacredness is individualized. And yet, some part of you respects it. The freedom, the variety, the tolerance. even if it feels like a dozen temples and no shared flame. You toss a coin into the fountain. It lands with a soft splash. No priest interprets its arc. No priest is needed. You return home well to your host's modern villa, with your mind buzzing from the divine disarray. Religion may have shifted, but something even more astonishing awaits health. You reach for a dried fig to soothe a sudden toothache, but your host offers something called ibuprofen, a small, unassuming tablet. You hesitate. Where is the herbal poultice? The heated compress? The priestess with her incantations? You swallow it skeptically. 20 minutes later, the pain fades like a bad omen after a favorable augury. And when your host hears you mention a sore tooth, they gasp. You should see a dentist. You flinch. In Rome, that phrase usually meant forceps screaming and the possibility of a commemorative funeral plaque. Instead, you're whisked away to a gleaming building where a masked stranger who is not a surgeon's slave or barber uses machines to peer inside your mouth. Not once do they brandish hot tongs or demand you rinse with wine. Historians still marvel at Roman medical improvisation. We had surgical tools, public doctors, even hospitals for soldiers. But let's be honest, half the time we relied on superstition, and the other half on sheer stubbornness. Here, there are diagnostics, sterile instruments, and lighting so bright it would shame Apollo, and it doesn't stop at teeth. They have vaccines, tiny potions that stop entire plagues. No burnt offerings required. Diseases that once decimated legions are now rare footnotes. Smallpox gone. Leprosy managed. Even the common cold has rivals pills, sprays, and bizarre steaming machines that mist your face like a pampered senator. You're handed something called toothpaste, minty smooth, and blessedly free of crushed bones or ashes. Romans scrubbed with pumice vinegar and powdered charcoal. Effective, yes, but a dentist here would weep. Even eyesight is correctable. No sacred goose required to spot letters from across a room. Just lenses customized to your exact visual flaw, framed stylishly and perched on your nose like an adjustable diadem. You test a pair and see a pigeon 100 yards away blink. It blinks at you. You're offered more wonders machines that scan your insides, devices that track your heartbeats, pills that calm anxiety, lotions that erase rashes. There's an entire field of medicine for just feet, another for sleep, and yet another for mood. A Roman doctor might prescribe fasting and prayers. Here they hand you a chocolate-flavored protein drink and recommend 12 hours of rest. You obey cautiously. You explore a pharmacy, rows and rows of potions, bandages, creams, and things with names longer than a consul's title. None of them smell like goat. None require boiling. None involve leeches. And then the crowning glory, modern surgery. No crude blades or open-air amphitheaters. No watching a friend bite down on leather as a dislocated joint is reset. Instead, they lull you into sleep, complete sleep. You wake up afterward with fewer organs, more stitches, and a popsicle. You laugh, but you're also moved. This world has found ways to make pain less powerful, less defining. A Roman might spend weeks limping from a sprained ankle. Here you're running again in days. And if the pain doesn't go, they treat your mood too. Mental health. This is new. In Rome, you were either possessed melancholic or simply weak. Here, there are specialists who help with thoughts, with feelings, not just battlefield wounds or fevers, but grief, fear, sadness. People go to therapy. They speak their pain aloud in safe rooms, and someone listens professionally. You pause. You never considered that suffering could be treated with words rather than wine. Historians debate whether Roman medicine was ahead of its time or dangerously self-assured. What they can't argue is that this modern age has made care accessible, technical, and most astonishingly gentle. You brush your teeth with mint foam, pop a vitamin shaped like a cartoon fish, and think the gods may have abandoned us. But science picked up the slack. Your host offers you chamomile tea for sleep. You accept, and for the first time in days, you lie down knowing that if something aches, someone will know how to fix it. You wake the next morning, not to a rooster, nor to the bustle of sandals and shouted Latin, but to the sound of birdsong, piped in through a glowing rectangle. Nature Sounds app, your host calls it. You've experienced cities without dung strees, without beasts, feasts without vomit, and religion without statues. But this entertainment without blood. It's time to face Rome's greatest guilty pleasure spectacle. You remember the roar of the crowd, the rhythmic stamping of sandals in the Colosseum, the scent of sweat and sand and blood mingled under a summer sky. Gladiators fought beasts, charged, and the masses cheered. And here, people watch stories in boxes, screens. They call them shows, movies, and content, a word so vague it might as well mean mild diversion. You sit on the all-devouring sofa and face the glowing panel. With a few taps, you summon a story. No need to wait for festival day. No editor to prepare scrolls. Just instant tales on demand. The first show you watch is about dragons. Dragons. And somehow, it's not real. It's all illusion. Painted light and sound crafted so skillfully, it feels more real than memory. Historians still argue whether modern visual effects are art or sorcery. You vote sorcery. But what stuns you most is the lack of blood. No real pain. No one dies for sport. Even the dramas, with all their emotion and danger, are carefully constructed illusions. The actors live to perform again. Romans loved theater, yes. Plautus and Seneca would be impressed. But they never blurred the line between staged and real like this. In Rome, entertainment was physical, brutal. Crowds came to watch flesh meet blade, to see criminals punished, to celebrate victory through controlled carnage. Even in comedies, a well-timed slap to the face or pratfall into a fountain was standard fare. Here, everything is simulated, and somehow more personal. You scroll further. Music, podcasts, cartoons, performers with millions of admirers who never leave their bedrooms. You try a video game, a world inside the glowing box, where you control a gladiator with buttons. The arena is digital. The crowd is programmed. You lose, and no one dies. You win, and no one bleeds. And comedy. No clowns, no drunken slaves, spinning plates. Just people standing on stages, speaking into rods, microphones, and making the crowd laugh by talking. Just talking. No pratfalls, no slapstick. Just words. You almost miss the custard pies. Even sports have changed. You watch a game with men in armor, not lorica segmentata, but plastic-looking pads chasing an oval. There are rules, replays, announcers, no lions, no swords. The crowd still roars, but it's all statistics and sponsorships. Historians still debate whether modern entertainment is more refined or more removed from the visceral joys of ancient spectacle. You see both sides. There's elegance in a well-crafted story, but also a strange emptiness in watching pixels pretend to die. And yet, the control, the personalization. You can choose what to watch, pause it, skip it, replay your favorite parts. No one throws a cabbage if you dislike the performance. Even sleep can be aided by curated relaxation content, whale sounds, distant thunder. The soft voice of a man reading a list of medieval English surnames. You can even become an entertainer yourself. People film themselves eating, dancing, speaking, thinking, then broadcast it. Millions watch. No stage, no patron, just a rectangle, a voice, and a world of strangers. Roman poets would weep at the idea, or seize it with both hands. You lie back overwhelmed. The games have become stories, the arena a screen, the spectacle internal. But you admit there's beauty here. In this curated calm, this safe escape, no need to clutch your tunic in fear of being splashed by a dying gladiator. You dim the lights. The screen plays waves crashing against the beach. Somewhere in your mind, a memory of the Colosseum flickers. But it's quiet now. No roar, no blood, just the steady hush of the sea. And so, here you are, a Roman in a world where the gods have grown quiet, where the streets are clean, the chairs are soft, and the most fearsome beasts hum under the hood of a car. The air smells of nothing. The bread comes sliced. Baths are solo affairs. People speak to glowing rectangles and call it connection. There's no need to kneel before household gods. No need to shout over fishmongers. No need to chase pigs out of your atrium. You came expecting chaos. You found control. But beneath the layers of plastic and silence, something still pulses. The hunger for story, the rituals of eating, the comfort of warmth, light rhythm. Humanity has changed its face, but not its heartbeat. Yes, you miss the noise, the mess, the smell of mulsum on a hot evening. But you've also sat in a chair that hugs your spine, eaten cake without fear of parasites, and watched a sunset through glass so clear it might as well be air. You've walked through a world that feels like a dream, carved by engineers and artists alike. A place where pain is softened, solitude is respected, and bedtime, yes, even bedtime can include a soft-voiced guide whispering Roman absurdities until you drift away. So now, let your eyes rest. Let the sofa cradle your limbs like a triclinium never could. Forget the sandals, the scrolls, the vomitorium. Breathe deep. There are no fires, no mobs, no Senate session at dawn. Only the soft tick of progress and the comfort of knowing that even 2,000 years later, your world still matters. And as your sandals finally adjust to the shock of heated floors, silent streets, and caffeinated potions summoned by voice command, you pause. If all this made you question reality, imagine being someone who thought crossing the Rubicon was the peak of unpredictability. So let's raise the stakes. Let's take the most powerful man in ancient Rome, Julius Caesar, and drop him into the most overwhelming, chaotic battlefield modern civilization has to offer. Not the Senate, not war, the supermarket. Prepare your carts, and maybe a strigil. He's going to need both. Tonight, we're setting our sandals down in the heart of ancient Rome. The sun's dipping behind the columns of the Capitoline Hill, and you're wandering through a crush of bodies, merchants bellowing prices, oxen snorting under the weight of amphorae, and somewhere nearby, the clang of a blacksmith tuning a gladiator's greaves. But instead of stepping into battle tonight, you're going grocery shopping with Julius Caesar. That's right, picture him, laurels slightly askew, regal nose sniffing the scent of garum in the breeze, utterly unprepared for the chaos of a modern supermarket. He's used to being carried in a litter, not wheeling around a squeaky cart. And no, he does not understand coupons. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. You arrive with Julius at the Roman Forum, Rome's not so silent, not so orderly answer to a grocery aisle. It's loud, it's hot, it smells like honeyed dates and goat. Crowds shuffle around open stalls, stacked with dried figs, onions, braided into ropes, and suspiciously slick-looking fish. Caesar's frown deepens. You're already wondering if he's regretting not bringing his Praetorian Guard. The Forum wasn't just a market, it was a theater of status. Where you bought your barley mattered. Was it from a pleb who yelled too much, or a patrician's client who offered extra clean lentils? There was no one-price-fits-all here. Haggling wasn't optional. It was cultural choreography. Mainstream historical accounts describe the Forum as a central hub of civic and commercial life. Beyond food, you could buy bronze kitchenware sandal straps, even imported Egyptian perfumes if your denarii jingled loud enough. There was no paper money, just coins heavy and clunky. Try fitting those into a self-checkout tray. And then there were the shop signs. No fluorescent overheads here, just painted frescoes of what was sold inside a pig's head, for the butcher loaves for the baker, and a confused painted eel for the fishmonger. Historians still argue whether these images served the illiterate or were part of a broader Roman advertising charm offensive. Caesar sidesteps a puddle rainwater or amphora leak. It's unclear. He passes a vendor, hawking wine diluted with chalk, a common practice to stretch supply, and a street performer balancing an amphora on his head. You suggest he try a date. He sniffs it like it might bite. Here, currency wasn't the only way to transact. Barter was still alive, especially with out-of-towners. Say a jug of olive oil for a fresh tunic. The only loyalty program was nepotism. Julius, of course, doesn't queue. He waves a hand and gets figs. You're starting to see a pattern. And speaking of patterns, shopping bags, not a thing. Romans carried goods in baskets, sometimes tied to donkeys. If Caesar wanted his purchases delivered, he'd summon a slave. No, reusable totes with pineapples on them. As you trail him past a woman shouting about goose eggs being cheaper over by the Saturn temple, you start wondering Would Julius actually make it past the produce section today? You try to explain the concept of buy one, get one free, and he suspects it's a bribe. He's not entirely wrong. You glance over at the granaries where grains are scooped by weight, unbagged, and unwashed. Bread isn't pre-sliced, nor is it hygienically handled. Still, it's delicious, especially warm, flat Roman loaves flavored with fennel or anise. You can almost smell them now. Julius Caesar, war hero and political genius, is squinting at a turnip like it insulted his mother. You've made it to the produce section of 44 BCE, where nothing is neatly labeled and half the vegetables still have dirt clinging to their roots. The modern grocery aisle would be a miracle, or maybe a terrifying mystery to him. The Roman diet leaned heavily on legumes, grains, and seasonal vegetables. Chickpeas were a staple. Lentils, too. Cabbage was practically considered medicinal. Pliny the Elder. Yes, that Pliny once wrote that cabbage could cure everything from bad dreams to joint pain. Historians still argue whether this was honest belief or just the result of eating too much of it. Julius doesn't need convincing when it comes to lettuce, though. Romans associated it with sleep and digestion, making it a favored dish after heavy banquets. The version he picks up is loose-leafed and bitter, more like endive than anything found in today's hydroponic rows. He eyes the bruised leaves with suspicion. You try to explain organic, but it doesn't translate well. And then there's fruit. Figs, dates, and grapes dominate the stalls. Apples existed, but weren't like the glossy waxed ones we see now. They were knobby tart, and only sometimes sweet. Peaches, imported from Persia. Lemons, rare and mostly decorative. Bananas, sorry, those were still centuries away. A wrinkled vendor waves at Caesar with a sly grin and holds up a bundle of leeks. Good for the throat, Dominus, she cackles. Caesar gives her a nod that screams both benevolence and don't test me. You wonder how he'd survive the verbal assault of a modern grocery sample rep. In this world, everything smells more intensely. The garlic has a punch. The onions burn your eyes. There's a sack of chickpeas so dry that a small dust cloud erupts every time someone touches it. This isn't a clean, sterile space. It's sensory overload, and Julius loves control. You suspect he's barely holding it together. Payment here is its own adventure. No standardized pricing, no electronic scanners. Prices vary by hour, by mood, even by your sandals. If you look too rich, you pay more. If you look too desperate, you pay even more. Caesar, dressed in flowing toga with a purple border only worn by senators, isn't exactly incognito. You try explaining the concept of fixed pricing. He chuckles in disbelief. And what if the seller grows bored, he asks. What if the lettuce is having a poor day? You're reminded that the Roman worldview saw everything from produce to people as part of a delicate hierarchy. The same lettuce grown by a senator's estate could command double the price of a plebeian patch. Quality was reputation. There were no expiration dates, only judgment calls and the occasional outbreak of food poisoning. A coin for your health. Perhaps. There's a moment when Julius fingers a particularly rotund gourd and turns to you. Do they keep these in marble? He asks, marveling at the cool shaded storage behind the vendor's stall. You mention refrigeration, he frowns. That sounds like treason to the sun god. He pockets a pomegranate and you notice he's begun walking faster, less interested in browsing, more in escaping. A man used to decisive campaigns finds endless variety exhausting. still as he stops to admire a tray of fresh mushrooms, a known delicacy in his day, but also a suspected method of assassination. You can't help but imagine him in a fluorescent lit Safeway. Would he survive? The gluten-free aisle? You find yourself now beside Caesar at a stall stacked high with blocks of something that looks suspiciously like soap, but smells like a burned fig and a misplaced sheep. Welcome to Roman hygiene, where cleanliness existed, sure, but not exactly in the lavender-scented exfoliating body wash kind of way. Julius picks up a rough, chalky brick and sniffs it. His nose wrinkles. This, you explain, is what passed for soap, a crude mixture of animal fat and ash, sometimes bulked out with sand or crushed pumice. Ancient Roman soap was more abrasive than cleansing, more exfoliation by grit than suds and foam. Think of it as scrubbing yourself clean with a sorrowful biscuit. But most Romans didn't even use soap. The preferred method of bathing: slather your body in oil, often olive oil, then scrape it off using a curved metal tool called a strigil. This was supposed to pull dirt and sweat along with it. You demonstrate the motion. Caesar nods, recognizing it from his days at the bathhouses. A soldier's cleanliness was his armor after all. The vendor behind the hygiene stall offers a pot of something dark and oily. Julius opens it, dips a pinky, and recoils. That, you tell him, is scented oil made from rancid goose fat and herbs, apparently great for muscle soreness. Historians still argue whether people actually believed in its healing power, or if it was a long-running prank on the upper class. Caesar moves on to a display of teeth cleaning powders. Charcoal and crushed bones were common ingredients. Romans might have lacked toothpaste, but they were concerned with oral health. Mouthwash recipes of the day included vinegar salt and occasionally urine. You opt not to mention that detail. Nearby bundles of cloths are folded with a sales pitch about multi-use convenience. You explain they're reusable wipes. Caesar seems relieved until he realizes they're for both bathing and bathroom use. He stares into the distance. You suspect his mind is retreating to Gaul. Then there's hair care. Ancient Roman shampoos were non-existent, but they did have hair tonics. Many included ingredients like boiled walnuts, vinegar, or ground beetles meant to bring out shine or repel lice. Julius, famously self-conscious about his thinning hair, might have appreciated the effort, if not for the beetles. At the next stall, combs carved from bone sit next to bronze tweezers and simple razors. Grooming was serious business. Caesar was known for his clean-shaven look, despite the popularity of beards in earlier generations. Romans plucked, shaved, and scrubbed with a rigor that would put any spa menu to shame. You explain to him that today's soap comes in scents like cool glacier and summer rain. He looks at you like you've just described a minor deity, and when you try to explain dry shampoo, his brows knit together in imperial concern. You do not bathe yet, claim to be clean. Suddenly, a boy with a basket of rose petals approaches, trying to sell fragrance for the honorable one. Julius sniffs, shrugs, and drops a coin. The petals are dry, brittle, and likely salvaged from someone's wedding. Still, he tucks one behind his ear. Style is everything. As you guide him away from the soapstone and goose fat zone, he mutters about the complexity of Roman grooming rituals and how he still managed to look majestic at all times. You're not entirely sure whether he's bragging or venting, maybe both. By now, Julius is beginning to grasp something. Shopping, at least in ancient Rome, was not a leisurely stroll. It was a performance. Cleanliness wasn't just a virtue. It was political theater. And every object, from a pumice-studded soap to a goose-fat oil jar, told a story. Still, one thing remains clear. No amount of olive oil or strigil could prepare this man for a bottle of cucumber-scented body wash shaped like a bear. Julius is starting to look a little flushed. Not from embarrassment. He doesn't do embarrassment. But from the mounting realization that he understands less and less about the world you're showing him. He's conquered Gaul. He's reformed the Roman calendar. But now he stands before the ancient world's closest thing to sorcery cold storage. You're in the Roman equivalent of the frozen food aisle. It's not exactly frigid. There's no humming freezer, no frosty mist. When the doors open, but it's cool dark and lined with stone bins shaded from the Mediterranean sun. Large amphorae sit buried in crushed snow, imported from distant mountaintops and stored in underground ice houses known as Niveria. Julius raises an eyebrow. You've tamed snow. Well, not exactly. In Rome, snow and ice were luxury items. They were hauled down in straw-packed crates from the Apennines and sold by weight, kept in insulated pits called hypogaea. These chilly supplies were mostly used by the elite to chill drinks or make sorbet-like dishes from honey and fruit. You try to describe ice cream. He stares like you've just reinvented the aqueduct. Historians still argue whether the Roman upper class ever had access to true frozen desserts, or if they were more like glorified slush. What's certain is that anything cold enough to hurt your teeth was rare, expensive, and likely served at a dinner where someone was simultaneously plotting treason. Now, imagine Julius walking into a modern grocery store and facing rows upon rows of freezer doors filled with ready-made meals, popsicles, and pre-sliced vegetables. It's not just the chill that would shock him, it's the abundance. In his time, preserving food required salt, vinegar, smoking, or drying. Meats were salted into oblivion. Fish became garum, a pungent fermented sauce so powerful it could clear a room. Caesar picks up a dried sausage wrapped in fig leaves. He nods approvingly. Now this he recognizes. Roman cured meats were prized for travel and army rations. No refrigeration needed, just a good dose of salt and low expectations. You tell him about refrigerated trucks. He asks how many oxen they require. You gesture to a vendor arranging salted mullet on a stone slab. The fish gleam dully, preserved in layered salt, like ancient treasure. Romans loved their seafood, and preserving it was an art. Mackerel was a favorite, often stuffed with herbs and pickled in brine before long-distance transport. As he inspects a jar of pickled olives, you notice he's avoiding anything remotely icy. He doesn't trust it. Too unnatural. He reaches out a hand and recoils from a small amphora that's actually cold to the touch. His eyes narrow. You explain. It's been sitting on shaved snow. Snow, he mutters, should stay on mountains. To lighten the mood, you mention a Roman banquet trick, chilling drinks by lowering them into wells with pulleys. Caesar remembers this. Wealthy hosts would do anything to impress guests, even fake ice, by surrounding jugs with chilled marble. Still, He can't quite wrap his mind around the idea of commoners enjoying what was once reserved for emperors. Sorbet for peasants, popsicles for children. He mutters about the decline of discipline. You remind him that not everyone wants to eat sun-warmed dates on a battlefield. In a final act of bravery, he samples a slice of preserved fig. It's sticky, sugary, and still recognizably Roman. He nods solemnly. Some things, it seems, never change. But his victory is short-lived. A small child walks by, licking a brightly colored ice treat on a wooden stick. Julius freezes eyes wide. Is that an edible torch? You try not to laugh. He isn't amused. The produce has baffled him. The soap nearly broke him. The cold food witchcraft. But what really stops Julius Caesar in his tracks is the coin purse at his hip and the invisible money it suddenly can't match. You're now at the heart of Roman commerce, a clinking, clattering stall where money talks louder than the merchants. Bronze asses, silver denarii, the occasional glint of a gold aureus. It's all here, clutched in the calloused hands of buyers and sellers, dropped into small, leather coin bags that hang from waist belts or are hidden beneath togas with all the subtlety of a stage magician. Julius is in his element here. He understands this, the weight of a transaction, the heft of a real coin. He fingers a denarius minted with his own face. You try to explain that in your world, people carry plastic rectangles and tap them against machines that silently process their purchases. No coins, no faces, just numbers on screens. He goes pale. In Rome, coins were statements of power as much as payment. The images on them weren't decorative. They were propaganda. When Caesar minted coins bearing his own portrait, he essentially declared himself above tradition. Until then, it was gods and mythic ancestors who adorned currency, not living mortals. Historians still argue whether this bold move directly led to his assassination, or if it was just the last olive in a very full amphora. You explain the credit card. He stares. You borrow money from no one, and yet the seller is paid. He asks if this is a form of sanctioned lying. You admit in a way, yes, Romans didn't have banks in the modern sense, but they did have moneylenders and credit systems. Wealthy patrons extended credit to clients. Debts were tracked by hand, often carved into wax tablets or etched on a stroke of broken bits of pottery. These shards were the receipts of their time, surprisingly durable and equally cryptic. There were no PIN numbers, but defaulting on a debt could get you publicly humiliated or worse, sold into slavery. The stakes were a bit higher than a $35 overdraft fee. Julius observes a transaction between two men, one offering a handful of coins, the other weighing them on a tiny bronze scale. Coins were not always trusted by appearance alone. Shaving edges to skim silver was a known trick, hence the weighing. You imagine Caesar encountering a coin-sorting machine at a modern arcade. It would either delight him or incite a full military campaign. Now picture him at a supermarket checkout. He places a fig, a loaf of bread, and a suspiciously shiny pear on the counter. The cashier blinks. He pulls out a denarius. She points to the card reader. He insists the coin is legal tender. It's not. You step in, swiping your card. He's stunned and slightly offended. What magic is this, he asks. You carry no coins. You command the food. You leave with it. You try explaining loyalty points. He misinterprets them as favors owed by grocers, a network of political alliances encoded in bean purchases. He nods, impressed. So, you rise in rank by buying cheese often. You don't correct him. He steps back from the stall and surveys the area. Gone are the familiar rhythms of buyer and seller. This market is faster, cleaner, and somehow more disorienting. He watches a woman scan her groceries, tap her phone, and walk out in under a minute. She used no words, he whispers. He looks at you troubled. In my time, a man must see his coin feel it pass from palm to palm. The clang of bronze. It confirms the trade. Here, there is only silence. And yet things disappear from shelves. It's not just the technology, it's the trust. Transactions without touch, without ceremony. Commerce stripped of its theater. For a Roman statesman raised on ritual, this is far more alien than any frozen fish or scented soap. And so he returns his denarius to its pouch with a tiny sigh. You're barely past the money stall when Caesar's foot catches on a rubber mat and he lets out a frustrated grunt. He glares down affronted. But this isn't about flooring. It's about fabric. More specifically, his fabric and how much it does not fit in here. He adjusts his toga. It flows behind him like a flag of disapproval, catching on corners, brushing against dusty crates, and drawing stares from every passerby. It's pristine, cream-colored, and heavy, draped just so, with the purple stripe of a Roman senator running like a badge of honor down one side. In ancient Rome, clothing wasn't fashion, it was rank. And Julius is in this moment severely overdressed. You spot a handmade sign above the nearest doorway. No shirt, no shoes, no service. You point it out. He reads it aloud slowly. So, sandals do not count. You shrug. He shakes his head. Barbaric. In ancient Rome, the toga was a symbol of civic duty and male citizenship. But it wasn't convenient. It took effort to wear yards of wool twisted and pleated in ways that required practice, sometimes assistance. One scholar even suggested young boys learn to wear togas the way modern kids learn to tie neckties. The toga was impractical by design, a garment for men who didn't need to do things with their hands. Contrast that with modern attire. Jeans, t-shirts, sneakers. Clothes designed for movement, not status. You explain the concept of athleisure. Julius assumes it's battle wear. He's not far off. He stops in front of a market vendor, folding piles of tunics, simple cotton things in earthy tones. Ah, he says, visibly relaxing. Something Roman at last. You mention the price tag dangling from the sleeve. He lifts it, scowls, and mutters, "A slave would cost less." The Romans judged clothing not by logos, but by dye. Deep purple extracted painstakingly from murex snails was the most expensive and exclusive. Caesar's stripe isn't just a fashion statement, it's a declaration of rank. So when a child walks by in a bright purple hoodie, Julius stares like he's seen a donkey wearing laurels. Historians still argue about the practicality of Roman dress. Some claim the toga was ceremonial, worn only in courts or Senate sessions. Others insist it was daily wear for elites. What's agreed upon, no one enjoyed it. Even Augustus reportedly found it fussy and outdated. Julius wears his like armor, but you can tell the weight is starting to wear on him. He glances around and notes the variety of clothing. No uniformity, no unity. Everyone here is a visual free-for-all. To Caesar, who views society as a hierarchy woven into every thread of your outfit, this is visual chaos. Even worse, some people wear clothes with words printed across them. Slogans, brand names. It's the equivalent of announcing your allegiances in public graffiti. One man walks past wearing flip-flops and a tank top that says boss. Julius scoffs. He commands no one. You tell him about dress codes, office wear, casual Fridays. He looks intrigued until you mention pajama pants in public. His face falls like a collapsed colonnade. And don't even try to explain Crocs. At a nearby booth, a mannequin wears jeans with rips across the knees. Caesar's eyes narrow. Is he injured? You say it's fashion. He blinks. Fashion wounds. He turns toward you, folds his arms over his toga, and delivers a very Caesar-like proclamation. Clothing should declare virtue, dignity, and purpose. These, he gestures broadly, declare laundry failure. You don't argue. And yet there's a moment, a fleeting flicker, when he spots a well-cut navy blazer and tilts his head. You can almost see the gears turning. With the right brooch, perhaps. Things were going relatively smoothly until you entered the pickle aisle. Julius Caesar stops dead in his tracks. His eyes flick from jar to jar, each one containing a different shade of green. Floating objects suspended in translucent brine, like ancient relics preserved for worship. Gherkins, okra, pepperoncini. He stares at a jar of pickled eggs like it's an omen from the gods. In ancient Rome, pickling wasn't strange. It was survival. Romans pickled everything from turnips to fish. They used vinegar and brine, often mixing in herbs like dill thyme or mustard seed. Food preservation was a matter of practicality in a world without refrigeration, and pickled goods featured heavily in soldier rations and peasant meals alike. Still, something about these jars unsettles him. Maybe it's the uniformity, the way each item is perfectly packed, perfectly still, too orderly, too eerie. You unscrew a jar of bread and butter pickles and offer him a slice. He sniffs it like it might be poisoned, and honestly, based on his track record with betrayal, he has every right to be cautious. He takes a bite. Then slowly, ominously, he chews. The flavor hits him with a jolt. Sweet, sour, tangy, sharp. It stings, he whispers, like he's describing a venomous insect. He takes another bite anyway. Historians still argue whether Julius Caesar had a sweet tooth. Some sources suggest he enjoyed honey-glazed dates and spiced wine. But the modern sweet and sour flavor profile, that's a curveball he didn't expect. You gesture to a jar of pickled pig's feet. He leans in, then recoils. Is this decorative? You shake your head. Edible. He backs away slowly. Roman cuisine wasn't shy about its flavors. Garum, the infamous fermented fish sauce, was as omnipresent as ketchup in a modern diner. Yet the visual punch of neon pink pickled eggs and chartreuse relish still throws him off balance. In his world, pickled food was tucked into earthen pots hidden in storerooms. Here, it's proudly displayed, labeled, and multiplied. He reaches for a jar labeled kosher dill spears. He reads it aloud, squinting. So, these spears are holy. You explain. It's not a weapon and not religious in the way he thinks. But the damage is done. He sets it down gently, as though it might explode from semantic confusion. Then comes the betrayal. Innocently enough, he spots a jar labeled Caesar dressing. He lights up. Named for me, he asks clearly, pleased. You hesitate. You try to explain that no Caesar salad and its dressing are modern creations invented in Mexico by an Italian-American chef named Caesar Cardini in the 1920s. It has nothing to do with Julius the Roman general and dictator, despite the garlands of grated Parmesan and crushed crouton tributes. He stares at the bottle, then stares at you, then back at the bottle. I have conquered Gaul, reformed the calendar, and stabilized Rome, he says flatly. And this is my legacy. You try to make a joke, something about salads seizing the day, but he's not laughing. Instead, he picks up the bottle and reads the ingredients. Soybean oil, sugar, xanthan gum. He frowns. These are not condiments. They are curses. And yet he doesn't put the bottle down. Something about it draws him in. Perhaps the label's golden trim, or the power of his own name in the modern era. He tucks it into his shopping basket like a trophy won in battle. The next jar he encounters contains pickled garlic stuffed olives. He spins it slowly. I don't know whether to eat this or use it as a weapon. You nod. That's the spirit. If Julius Caesar could handle the political labyrinth of the Roman Senate, you figure he can manage a self-checkout kiosk. You were wrong. He approaches the glowing machine with the same cautious reverence one might offer a priest's altar or an executioner's block. The screen lights up. A gentle beep pings. Scan your first item. It chirps. Julius freezes. To him, this is sorcery. No clerk, no coin exchange, just an unmanned glowing oracle that speaks in commands. He looks to you wide-eyed. Is it possessed? You assure him it's not. He is not reassured. You show him how to scan a jar of olives. The barcode slides past the red laser with a beep. He jerks back. It blinked at me, he whispers. Is it judging the item? He tries it himself. The Caesar dressing. He holds it upside down. Nothing. He tries the front label. Still nothing. You turn the bottle, guiding him to the barcode. He frowns deeply. You mean to say, every item bears a secret mark. He says it like he's uncovered a grand conspiracy. In ancient Rome, inventory was tracked using wax tablet scribes and lots of shouting. In big markets, tallies were kept by hand, and merchants relied on sharp memories. No laser beams, no scanners, no artificial voices telling them to place the item in the bagging area. He places the dressing down. Another beep. The voice responds, unexpected item in bagging area. Caesar blinks. It talks, and it is angry. Historians still argue about how much administrative work Caesar himself did. While he reformed everything from the calendar to grain distribution, it's unlikely he ever managed the actual accounts of a Roman warehouse. Now, faced with this flat-voiced demon kiosk, he's entirely out of his depth. He tries scanning a bundle of herbs. The screen doesn't recognize it. He scans again. Still nothing. Is this item forbidden? He asks. You explain produce needs to be weighed. He looks at the scale, then at you. Am I weighing the value of Rome now? He tries to navigate the touchscreen. A pop-up appears. Would you like to donate $1 to end hunger? He reads the screen. You're bartering with guilt. He says yes, not out of charity, but to make it go away. And then it happens. A man next to him scans 10 items in rapid succession. Beep, 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 bags them, taps a card, and walks off. The entire ritual takes under a minute. Caesar watches stunned. He is clearly a priest, he says, or a magician. You remind him that in today's world, speed matters. Efficiency is king. He scowls. So the state favors those who rush. You shrug. Pretty much. Then comes the real test payment. He pulls out a denarius, holds it up proudly. The machine does not care. You guide him to the card reader, your card. He winces as the green light appears. So it accepts you, but not me. He crosses his arms. Treachery. To Julius Caesar, buying goods without speaking to another person, without ceremony or negotiation, is not just foreign, it's profane. Roman commerce was loud, personal, and public. This machine is silent, cold, and disinterested. It offers no compliments, no haggling, no respect. Only pings. He leans in, squints at the screen, and whispers, "Are you alive?" No answer. You finish the transaction for him. The final beep, the confirmation, the digital receipt. He looks around. Where is my proof? My wax seal. You hold up the receipt. Thin, curling, disposable. He stares at it, utterly unimpressed. That is not a proper scroll. You steer Caesar away from the self-checkout before he challenges it to single combat. He's still muttering about secret marks and voiceless shopkeepers when you round the corner into a land both more familiar and far more dangerous, the snack aisle. He stops short, eyes wide like a general, surveying the battlefield. Shelves stretch in both directions, stacked with an army of brightly colored bags, each one more aggressively cheerful than the last. Chips, crackers, cookies, gummies. He picks up a bag of cheese puffs and squints at the cartoon mascot. This tiger, he boasts of salt. You explain flavor branding. He does not understand, but the fluorescent orange dust leaves a mark on his fingers, and for a moment, he looks like he's considering it war paint. Snacks, you tell him, are the heart of modern impulsive eating. Bite-sized, mass-produced, portable. A Roman would recognize the concept after all they had their own fast foods. In the back alleys of Rome, Thermopolia sold quick meals to busy citizens. Bread, cheese, olives, dried fruit. Sometimes stew in clay bowls. Ancient vending just with more smoke and fewer mascots. Julius picks up a box of crackers that boasts, now with 20% more crunch. He taps it. How can one quantify crunch? You shrug. With science. He nods slowly, as if contemplating the siege of a particularly annoying province. And then he sees it. A bag of pork rinds. He reads the label. Crispy swine skin. He grins. At last, something Roman. Indeed, fried or roasted pig skin was known to Roman soldiers, though less a snack and more a byproduct of battlefield cuisine. He tears open the bag, with difficulty tastes one, and chews thoughtfully. Acceptable. Salty. Slightly confusing. You explain preservatives. He raises an eyebrow. Like embalming. Nearby, he notices an end cap display, pre-packaged meat sticks branded Emperor's Choice. He picks one up, clearly amused. Was this approved by the Senate? You tell him it's mechanically separated meat. He gently puts it back down, as one might return a snake to its nest. Now, you're passing shelves of sugary treats, chocolate-covered everything, marshmallow blobs, artificially blue things. He pauses in front of a bag of sour candy, reads, "Extreme Sour Shock," and laughs a short, derisive chuckle. This is punishment disguised as pleasure. Historians still debate how sweet Roman sweets were. Honey was their primary sweetener, no refined sugar yet, so their confections lean toward rich, sticky, and floral. Honey-glazed nuts, date-filled pastries, and cakes spiced with pepper, sweet and savory. Caesar's palate is clearly more intrigued by the fig and honey bar than the neon sour strip. You hand him a granola bar labeled ancient grains. He reads the ingredients: amaranth, quinoa, millet. These are my grains, he says, genuinely delighted. It's the first time all day he's felt like something makes sense. But the joy fades quickly, because now he sees the soda fridge. Rows and rows of plastic bottles bubbling with artificial fizz flavors, bearing names like Voltage and Code Red. He lifts one and watches the carbonation dance inside. This potion lives. You open one for him. The fizz erupts. He recoils, then sips. The sugar hits like a war elephant. He coughs, hands you the bottle, and mumbles something about culinary betrayal. You suggest water. He agrees. And yet, even as he wipes the sugar from his mouth, you can see the gears turning. Rome's banquets were performances. Food was theater. Snack culture, in its gaudy, colorful absurdity, isn't that different. It's just that the stage is lit by fluorescent bulbs, and the bread now comes with cheese dust. Julius Caesar is weary. His brows furrow. His toga droops slightly. He has fought battles, crossed Rubicons, and dictated empire-wide decrees, but never has he faced such a relentless challenge as the modern shopping cart. It squeaks. It veers inexplicably to the left. It contains exactly one bottle of Caesar, dressing a half-eaten fig bar, a cluster of suspicious olives, and what you suspect may be an impulse-purchased air freshener. This, you now realize, is Caesar's cart of destiny. In ancient Rome, carts were tools of utility, not leisure. Hand-pulled or mule-drawn, they transported goods to and from markets loaded with amphorae grain sacks or bundles of firewood. No swiveling wheels, no built-in cup holders, and certainly no one navigating an aisle while texting. Caesar pushes the cart forward. It makes a high-pitched whine that draws the eyes of everyone nearby. "Is it wounded?" he asks. You explain poor wheel alignment. He lifts the cart's front like he's about to perform field surgery. You gently lower it back down. There were no carts in the Roman Forum. Shoppers used baskets or had slaves carry their goods. Heavy lifting was for the underpaid or enslaved. Caesar is now doing his own pushing, and it shows. "I am being punished," he mutters. The cart rattles along the tile, bumping into a pyramid of canned soup. He apologizes to it. Then, looking over his shoulder, adjusts course dramatically, just in time to swerve into a discount bin full of novelty mugs. One reads, "I came. I saw. I bought too much." He does not laugh. Historians still argue about Roman attitudes toward manual labor. While Roman soldiers and citizens prided themselves on discipline and endurance, elites generally distanced themselves from grunt work. Caesar pushing his own cart, scandalous, revolutionary, tragicomic. You suggest using a smaller basket. He declines. If I must do this, he says, I do it grandly. A sharp turn nearly knocks over a stack of cereal boxes. Why must the wheels swivel? Can they not obey? You explain the benefits of maneuverability. He scowls. They are too free. He picks up a bag of flour. It's 5 pounds. He reads the nutritional information like it's a peace treaty. Why does bread require thiamine mononitrate? You change the subject to carts again. You point out the child's seat built into the cart. He examines it. For infants, to ride into battle. You now realize you've been in the store for nearly 2 hours, and Caesar is still pushing this cart like a reluctant centurion maneuvering a siege tower. It rattles more with each step, carrying both groceries and a metaphor for crumbling imperial dignity. He tries to park it, fails, backs up, hits a display, tries again. Another squeal. You offer to steer. He refuses. A general does not surrender his chariot. To him, the cart is both burden and symbol. In a world where power once meant commanding men and moving armies, he now commands. A plastic basket with temperamental wheels and a broken child strap. As he limps down the frozen aisle again, the cart groaning behind him, he whispers just loud enough for you to hear et tu castor wheel. After wrestling the shopping cart through narrow aisles and past a cereal display shaped like a siege tower, Caesar reaches his limit. He points urgently toward a door marked restrooms. You nod, and soon you're guiding one of Rome's greatest minds toward a modern public bathroom. He hesitates at the entrance. The sign puzzles him. A symbol of a figure in pants on one side and a figure in a dress on the other. Is this a temple, he asks? You say it's gender designation. For what purpose, you decide not to explain everything. Now public hygiene isn't a new idea. In fact, ancient Rome was famous for it. Their public baths. Thermae were sprawling complexes of steam rooms, plunge pools, massage courts, and latrines, all fed by impressive aqueducts and carefully engineered drainage systems. Caesar helped fund such projects himself, but those were majestic, open social spaces, places of politics and gossip. Not this. You lead him into the men's room. He stares at the stalls. Private cubicles. He whispers it like it's a betrayal. In his time, Roman latrines were long stone benches with holes cut side by side, no dividers. You went with friends, chatted, gossiped, maybe discussed tax reform while doing your business. Here, there is silence. A motion sensor faucet activates. Caesar jumps back. Did it? Sense me, he looks at you. You are surrounded by spirits. He approaches a toilet, stares at it, circles it. A throne, he mutters. You explain its function. He frowns. But where is the sponge stick? You tell him that's long gone. He shakes his head in disbelief. Historians still argue about the fun tersorium, a communal sponge on a stick kept in vinegar, passed from user to user. Caesar grimaces at the memory. Then you show him toilet paper. He examines it carefully, sniffs it. Soft, he admits, but too white. It mocks the dignity of the act. And then the final test, the automatic flush. You didn't prepare him. As he turns to leave, the sensor detects motion, and with a sudden whoosh, the toilet comes alive. Caesar leaps back, eyes wide. It drinks the offering he asks genuinely unnerved. You show him the sink again. The soap is liquid. The hand dryer howls like a banshee. He mutters a Latin curse under his breath, drying his palms on his toga instead. These waters obey no man. He's had enough. Exiting the restroom, he takes a deep breath, visibly relieved to be among shelves again. Even if they're stacked with unfamiliar lotions and scented candles, labeled things like citrus rainstorm and breeze of wonder. He eyes one called Roman Retreat and snorts. That smells like sandal sweat and vinegar. You glance at your watch. It's been 3 hours. You've seen Caesar the Conqueror, Caesar the Cart Wrangler, and now Caesar the Bathroom Survivor. He's weathered personal hygiene, cold storage, capitalism, and chemical air fresheners. And somehow, he's still here. But you can tell. The man who once stood firm against the Gallic tribes has now met his match in a Dyson hand dryer. You lead Caesar down a quieter aisle now, past the frigid trauma of auto-flushing toilets and spectral hand dryers, toward a row of innocuous spice jars. He relaxes. These at least look familiar. Tiny vials of colored powders, herbs and glass names etched in cursive script, parsley, cinnamon, cumin, cardamom, turmeric. Caesar reaches for a bottle of black pepper. He pops the lid, sniffs deeply, and closes his eyes. Now this, he says, is the scent of power. In ancient Rome, spices were more than seasoning, they were status. Black pepper, imported from India, was worth more than gold by weight. A jar like this would have signaled wealth, prestige, and world-spanning trade connections. The average Roman citizen couldn't afford it. Caesar, of course, could afford entire sacks. But there's something odd here. He notices how affordable it is. That costs less than the sponge loaf. You nod. Mass global trade and commercial farming have turned rare luxuries into kitchen staples. He turns the bottle, slowly confused. You conquered the world for this, and now you give it away. Historians still argue about the full impact of Rome's spice obsession on its economy. Some claim the empire drained itself, importing exotic seasonings. Others argue it was a sign of interconnected greatness. You point out the world flavors section, rows of curry pastes, chili oils, mole, za'atar. Caesar raises an eyebrow. So all lands are represented by sauce. He pauses in front of a jar labeled Everything Bagel Seasoning. He reads the ingredients aloud. Garlic, onion, sesame. What is a bagel? You attempt a definition. He suspects witchcraft. As he scans the spice shelf, something catches his eye. A sleek premium tin marked Emperor's Blend. He smiles. Finally, tribute. But as he reads the label, smoked paprika, rosemary, and lime zest, his smile fades. Paprika. The Hungarians were not even organized yet. You explain that modern blends are invented for marketing. He holds up another Napoleon's Heat. This one lost, he mutters. Next, he comes upon saffron, still costly, still elusive. He picks up the vial reverently. This, he says, could buy a senator's silence. He's not exaggerating. In his day, saffron was used in cooking medicine and even rituals. Roman brides scattered it on bed sheets. Caesar once ordered a saffron bath. He smells it now. Memories. But the spices here are not just ingredients. They're brands. Every jar, every packet boasts a story. Harvested at dawn. Crafted with love. Ancestral recipe. You explain food marketing. He tilts his head. So, your citizens choose flavors based on poetry. He's intrigued, but skeptical. Further down, you point out curry powder. He smells it pungent, sharp, warm, like marching near a festival, he observes. You try to connect the dots, spices in both India and Rome, two great cultures of food trade and ambition. He nods. We both understood one truth. Blandness is defeat. You walk him past sumac fenugreek grains of paradise. He inspects each like a general reading a spy report. One label reads, "Perfect for chicken." He scoffs, as if seasoning knows what it suits. And then tucked in the back, he spots a forgotten jar, Silphium seasoning blend. He freezes. You explain, it's just a recreation. The real plant went extinct over 1,000 years ago, harvested into oblivion by Romans who adored its taste, smell, and other properties. Caesar picks up the jar. Silphium, he murmurs. We fed it to poets and lovers. His eyes grow distant. Even I could not preserve it. For once, he says nothing more. You walk in silence for a moment. Aisle 9, part spice rack, part museum, part prophecy. It's where empire was once preserved in resin and bark, and now it's a $3.99 purchase. You're nearing the end now. The cart creaks with resignation, and Caesar's eyes hold that distant glaze of a man who's smelled too many artificial cheeses. But before you check out, he halts rigid before a towering display labeled Special Dietary Foods. It's time for labels. He grabs a box and reads aloud gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan, non-GMO, keto-friendly. There's a long pause. Then, is this food? You nod. He flips it over. Protein, 2G. Saturated fat, 0G. What is gar gum? You shrug. A plant thickener. He narrows his eyes. Then why does it sound like a punishment? Ancient Rome had no food labels, no ingredient lists, no allergy warnings. You ate what looked and smelled edible, and if you fell ill afterward, well, that's how you learned. Merchants might swear their goods were fresh from Capua or touched by Diana's own goats, but there was no FDA, no fine print. Historians still argue whether ancient Romans understood dietary effects the way we do now. They definitely linked certain foods with moods or humors, cold foods for hot tempers, light grains for sluggish digestion. But they didn't count calories. They didn't know about cholesterol. Low sodium wasn't a selling point. Salt was the point. Caesar squints at a tiny nutritional table. Per serving 110 calories. But what is a serving? A mouthful? A handful, the day's ration. You try to explain serving size. He shakes his head. So, this biscuit is both small and disappointing. He picks up a tub of yogurt marked lactose-free. He reads it again. Yogurt without milk. His voice drops. This is heresy. Then comes the real challenge, Latin. He lifts a box of cereal and flips to the ingredients. Riboflavin, niacinamide, calcium pantothenate. He narrows his eyes. This is bad Latin. You nod. It's science Latin. He looks deeply offended. To him, Latin is the language of law, philosophy, poetry, and conquest. Seeing it butchered on the side of a cereal box for marketing purposes is a step too far. This one says, made with locust bean gum. He drops the box. Do not tell me that's literal. Next, he finds expiration dates. He gasps. This food dies. You nod. Eventually, he stares at the printed date, MMDDYYY, and tries to interpret it like a prophecy. The 12th month of the 21st? No, this is numerology. In Rome, food wasn't stamped with dates. You used your senses or asked the vendor if yesterday's fig was still friendly. Preservation was guesswork. Today's airtight seals, vacuum packaging, and best by warnings are alien. Caesar suspects it's a riddle designed to trick enemies. He picks up an energy bar labeled Vital Warrior. The back reads, Fuel your power, conquer your day. He snorts. You call this conquest? Where's the barley mash, the boar, the wine? You open the wrapper. He sniffs it, tastes, then mutters, this would not feed a slave. Still, there's something he admires about all this decoding. In a weird way, these labels, dense, bureaucratic, half Latin, are the closest thing he's seen to Roman governance. Measurement, regulation, scribal precision. There is order here, he admits, even if it smells like cardboard. Finally, he finds a small bag labeled Caesar salad croutons. He picks it up slowly, reads it, and in a dry voice says, So now I am also stale bread. After the battle of the labels, Caesar is quiet, too quiet. You begin to worry until you see the spark of resolve in his eyes as he wheels his beleaguered cart toward a modest sign, Customer Service Returns. He straightens his toga, lifts his chin, and declares, We must return the grapes. You hesitate. Why they were bruised and slightly sassy. And so to the return counter you go. In ancient Rome, returning goods wasn't common, but it wasn't unheard of. If a product was misrepresented or faulty Roman law allowed for actio redhibitoria, the return of defective items. But the process was slow, paper-heavy, or wax tablet-heavy, and usually settled in court. Not this. Here, Caesar stands in line. He is not used to lines. His fingers twitch. He keeps glancing at the grapes like they're plotting a second betrayal. When it's his turn, the cashier greets him. Hello, do you have the receipt? There is a long nod. No, he says solemnly, but I do have honor. You try to step in. Sorry he paid in coin. No email address. No loyalty number. The cashier smiles tightly. We really do need the receipt for a refund. Julius raises one eyebrow. I am Julius Gaius Caesar. I require no scrap of paper. She blinks. Sir, we'll need a manager. He nods. Summon your tribune. As the manager arrives, you try to explain ancient Rome's return protocols. Caesar listens with half interest, frowning at a small child, loudly unwrapping a candy bar in line. Why is he not being restrained? You tell him about individual freedom. He mutters something about barbarism. The manager is patient. Perhaps sensing Caesar is in fact slightly different. She offers store credit. Caesar looks at the gift card like it's a cursed object. It has no weight, he complains. No chime. No engraving of my likeness. He pockets it anyway. Historians still debate how Romans handled commercial disputes in the street market. While civil law was robust, much relied on personal reputation. A merchant who sold bad oil too often would be shamed or driven out. Caesar misses that consequence. Ritual. a well-placed sneer. He turns to you. In my day, a sour grape could cost a man his livelihood. You reply, today it costs $3.49, in a passive-aggressive Yelp review. You make your way out of the return line. Caesar glancing back once at the clerk, as if weighing whether she could be bribed with olives. He says nothing more. But then, as you walk past the greeting card section, he stops. He picks one up. Reads, sorry you're going through a rough time. Here's wine. He considers this, Nuss, and places it reverently in the cart. You've made it. After what feels like an odyssey that would put Homer to shame, Caesar pushes his sputtering cart toward the final threshold, the checkout line. There's a hush in the air. The fluorescents hum above like lazy cicadas. This is the final test. He examines the conveyor belt, then looks back at you. So, I must present my spoils to the gatekeeper. You nod. He begins carefully placing his items, one by one, in ceremonial fashion. The croutons, the rogue air freshener, the disloyal grapes, the dressing with his name. The greeting card, of course, goes last. The cashier, a bored teenager wearing a lanyard covered in anime pins, begins scanning. Beep, beep. Caesar's face tightens. This is judgment. He fumbles for his coin purse. You gently stop him. Card only, remember. He scowls, but hands over the plastic rectangle you've lent him. He taps. The screen lights up. Transaction approved. And just like that, it's done. Caesar stares in disbelief. That's it. No scrolls, no tally, no priest. You offer the receipt. He holds it between two fingers like a suspicious scroll fragment. It has no seal. No scribe has blessed this. You bag the items. He watches fascinated as the bags rustle and collapse inward. What material is this? You tell him it's plastic. He whispers, sorcery. But as you approach the automatic doors, Caesar stops. The scanner beeps. The doors open. He freezes. It knows me. He steps through slowly, as if expecting trumpets. There are none. Just the sound of cartwheels squeaking against pavement. He squints up at the sky, deeply unsure whether he's passed a test or merely survived an ambush. At your car, he watches the trunk open. So, this is your chariot. You nod. He eyes the gear shift. What is this lever for? You decide not to explain. You load the groceries. He stands in silence for a moment, then says, I have crossed the Rubicon, faced legions, and outwitted senators. But never have I been so thoroughly disarmed. You ask what he'll tell the Senate. He looks down at the Caesar dressing, now slightly warm. That our descendants made me into a sauce. That trade was silent. That scrolls were disposable. That cold food was common, and that the wheel spins without me. He watches a man walk out with Bluetooth earbuds and a six-pack of lemon seltzer. Caesar sighs. Still, as you prepare to leave, he reaches for one final item, the greeting card. He opens it, reads it again. Then, very quietly, he smiles. And now, as the last beep fades into the distance and the cart wheels finally fall, still let your mind drift into the hush that follows strange adventures. The kind of hush that settles after a long day, filled with blinking lights, foreign customs, and questions no one really has answers to. Imagine Caesar now, not in his marble forum or commanding his legions, but sitting on a modest couch, feet tucked beneath a throw blanket, a mug of something gently steaming in his hands, trying to understand what artificial flavors really are. Outside, a neon sign buzzes. Inside, he's reading the side of a cereal box, like it's a secret edict. Let the bright aisles dim in your memory. Let the fizz of soda soften into silence. Let the rustle of receipt paper curl gently into the quiet of sleep. You've walked beside emperors through frozen food sections and soapstone towers. You've helped him navigate both literal and metaphorical expiration dates. And now, even he begins to drift lulled, not by trumpets or scrolls, but by the strange modern lullaby of beeps fans and the hum of overhead lights. Close your eyes. Breathe in. Maybe the future is strange, but for now, at least it's quiet.